Now, the other writer, of course, that we were both friends with, who might be worth talking about, who was fascinated by literature. I mean, Hitchens was fundamentally a lover of fiction, I think, and a real appreciating critic of prose itself, who really became more of a polemicist. I mean, who wrote nonfiction, obviously, but really was born to write reviews, I think. But after 9/11, of course, he took this other turn. He felt out of duty, really, to defend the world against what he thought was a deeply illiberal jihadism that was coming to get all of us, and did get his close friend, of course, Salman Rushdie. Tell me about Hitchens and your friendship with him.
I knew him best in the years of what some people thought of as his apostasy, defending the Iraq War and so forth. Whereas I could sort of see why it was all of a piece with the things Christopher believed. I loved him. I was not one of his real intimates, but I saw a fair amount of him. I moved to Washington early in the 2000s, but I'd met him before. And I found him enormously sympathetic and gentle. I think that was one of the things that was most surprising to people about Christopher. I remember the first time we had them for dinner in Washington, my partner Bill, who is a very gentle person and in many ways a shy person, hates politics, absolutely hates politics. I wrote one novel about show business, and he said, finally, not one goddamn senator in the book. Finally you have a novel with people like Dolores Gray in it. And he was, he knew Christopher from television clips and so forth. He was absolutely terrified. I mean, what's that trilling phrase, the bloody crossroads, politics and literature? I mean, Christopher was the mayor of the bloody crossroads. And here he was coming to dinner. And Bill is like a cat. He's very instinctive about people. He sizes them up the second he's in the same room with them. Christopher walked through the door, and he was absolutely crazy about Christopher. He felt safe with Christopher, which is all a cat is always looking for. He feels safe. And I found him very gentle. I never remember him raising his voice, even when he was in argument. And I thought he was fascinating.
I did too. And I loved talking to him. I loved listening to him. I loved just observing him socialize. He was a brilliant socializer in a way that I really wasn't. I mean, I'm not that kind of person. So I loved being attached to that movable feast, which would followed him around everywhere. And he was so generous with his time.
He was very generous. And I'm remembering something about You and Me right now. Mm-hmm. Right after Christopher died, they rushed a lot of his books back into print. And there was one they wanted. It fell to me eventually to do the introduction for it because they couldn't get you. You were busy with something. It was the Mother Teresa book, the missionary position.
I was not going. No, it wasn't. Yeah. I just was not going to go there.
They wanted this in literally 3 days or something. A preface to this book. I agreed to do it when Carol, his widow, asked me, and I sort of know why they were interested in the two of us. They figured, well, it'll be. He would appreciate the larkiness of having, a Catholic do the introduction. And I write in that preface, if I'm remembering it correctly, that when you went to a party at his house, you saw all of these young journalists, many of them in the 2000s, who were quite conservative and were delighted to have this blue-chip British intellectual on their side of the Iraq War. And they would be at his feet listening to him. And I do remember him always saying, look up so-and-so, give a call to so-and-so. He was for people. He always wanted to see people get ahead. But they would be reveling in the conversation while it was on something like Iraq. And I always used to just think, just wait. Just wait. And I used to call it the Mother Teresa moment. And, these Bush administration Christians would then have to listen to him talk about, the thieving Albanian dwarf and things like that.
The leathery old saint, as he called it.
And they would just have to deal with it,
Yes, which was splendid. And he loved, And there's the other thing, that generation of literary figures and of political writers, there was so much more gusto. There was so much more sharp shooting. There was a lot of hostility and open warfare in rhetoric between leading literary figures.
Right. But what was the most important part of that, I think, was that when that kind of tussling occurred, you're talking about a pre-cancel culture.
Yes.
And after the battle, you lived to fight another day. And that changed at a certain point.